Presentation looks at how to approach the unseen poetry 24-mark question, so the main analysis and not the comparative poem. We are going to be looking at a poem called The Send Off by Wilfred Owen. It's very easy to find it online. The Poetry Foundation is a good resource to look at, and we're going to be looking at it in consideration of the question, how does the poem express the poet's thoughts and feelings about war? So, how do you approach the unseen poetry question? First of all, read the question really carefully, possibly more than once, and make sure you fully understand what it is asking you to do. Then read through the poem. Don't make up your mind at this point what the poem is about in the first line or first stanza. Read through and get a really good holistic picture of what is going on there. Then look back at the question and slowly read through the poem and annotate it in regards to what the question is asking. I'm going to show in a moment how I annotate and plan, and that can be a really, really useful process to hone so that you answer really efficiently because time is of the essence. Think about the timings for this. So, in a normal year, not a pandemic year where exams are either cancelled or you're sitting exams, exam style assessments in the classroom, in a normal year, you'd have about 35 minutes to answer this question. So, I would recommend in those circumstances 5 minutes reading and planning, 2 minutes on your introduction, 9 minutes per paragraph, and enough time for a quick conclusion and read through. No doubt you're doing some sort of assessment in school and you'll want to think about how long you have for that and accordingly adjust your timings. So, talking about annotation, I like my annotation process to feed into the planning. Your mark scheme is looking for a very broad range of ideas and terminology and recognition of what the poet is doing. So I find splitting my annotation into form, structure, and language works really well to make sure that then I have definite paragraphs set out to guide me, and I've made sure I have covered off a wide range of ideas. Now, in an exam conditions, I know you would only have a black pen, and I have done different colours for each paragraph just to demonstrate the build-up that is happening in my annotation. You don't need to do them in different colours, you just need to be alive to the fact that which bit corresponds to which idea and which paragraph. So F is obviously form, and as you can see here, I've looked at the rhyme scheme. I've thought about enjambment, I've thought about caesura, I've thought about how the stanzas appear on the page. All of those things will feed into my first paragraph, and I am not going to go through what the poem is about because I don't think that's particularly useful. We're not studying the poem, we're studying how to answer the question. So I would spend a moment as I go through looking particularly for things about form, and I actually find it very useful to go through the whole poem looking for form, the whole poem looking for structure, and then the whole poem for language details. You may find a different approach works for you. What is worth doing is experimenting and seeing how you can organise your thoughts most effectively and what is an efficient way for you to do. So once I've looked at form elements, I'll move over and start thinking about structure. So here it appears in green, but as I say, fine to still be using the same colour. And I've thought about what narrative voice there is. Is there a linear or a non-linear narrative to it? Here I've picked up that the sort of cyclical or circular narrative, and I've linked it to the idea of what the question is about. And again, you can see I've annotated on the poem asterisks showing that actually this bit is what I will be writing about when I'm covering the cyclical nature of the poem. Then I will continue and annotate for language features. And you can see here I've picked out ideas like foreshadowing, I've picked out the sort of hidden away elements, other things I've looked at, for instance, triadic structure. I've looked at language that has connotations of death or a semantic field of funerals. All of those ideas feed into what my third paragraph will be about. And you can see at the bottom, I've written the word tone and I put that it's muted and somber, or it's melancholy, it's sad. And I think something that's really useful to do is during your planning process is to note down a few pieces of high level vocabulary so that they're almost as a sort of grab bag when you're writing your essay. So put them there as you're thinking about how the poem makes you feel, what sort of atmosphere it has. So you've got a nice wide range of vocabulary and you're not going to be ending up being quite repetitive when you're writing fast. So once I've annotated, it is time to plan. And that will be much easier if you've annotated your poem, bearing in mind which ideas you're going to group together. These will then show you've got a broad range of understanding. You understand that form and structure and poetic devices and language features all reveal what the poet thinks about war. So when you're then in a stage to really organise what goes into each paragraph, think about what are your strongest ideas that link to the question. There is no point having an amazing idea that you think you're going to use as a sort of denouement at the end of your paragraph, running out of time and then not being able to cover it. So I would absolutely recommend you put your best ideas for each paragraph in first. Quickly check that you've got a broad range of terminology ready to use. All of your ideas are linked to the concept of what the poem is about. And I want to talk very quickly about that, that you are looking for what I'd refer to as a conceptualized response, that you understand the poem is not loads of little fragmented ideas that show different techniques. Instead, it is a holistic poem that has a concept behind it linked to the question. And you're going to want to make sure throughout your essay you are showing that you understand that this is the concept of the poem, this is how it relates to the question, and it is demonstrated through the language features, through the form, through the structure. So lead with this idea. This is what the poem is about. This is the concept behind the poem. And you will score far more highly on the mark scheme as opposed to just picking out lots of little features and saying what that one little thing shows. All of those ideas feed into the main concept, and you are going to make your examiner aware that you understand that idea. Also show that you've got an understanding that poetry has ambiguity to it and there can be alternative interpretations. You might view a technique as showing one thing, but it could also show something else. Don't be afraid to highlight that ambiguity in your plan and consequently in your essay. So let's move over to your introduction. You're going to want to keep it short and sharp, quickly state the concept, answering the question, and make it clear how you are going to show this in your essay. It does not need to be fancy. You just need to introduce your ideas and then get going on it. So for instance, I never think you need more than sort of 2, possibly 3 paragraphs that show you've answered the question. What, in this case, what does Owen think about war? You're going to show how you're going to do that, and you understand that there is a concept behind the poem. I'm not going to read it out. You can pause the video and have a look yourself. Then I would move straight into paragraph 1. And one thing I want you to be really noticing is the fact that it starts with a clear topic sentence that answers the question and actually shows you understand the concept behind the poem. In this case, it's that Owen abhors war. I'm going to let you pause the video to read through, but you'll notice things like there's plenty of terminology in there, there are embedded quotations, high-level vocabulary, but all of these ideas about form lead directly into the concept of what the poet feels about war, and are treated in that way as a way to answer the question, not lots of tiny little fragmented ideas. I also think it's worth finishing your paragraph with another reference to the question and the concept. So I'll let you pause now and read that through. So once you have written your first paragraph, you're going to want to remember to stick to your plan, keep referring back to it and making sure your organised thoughts appear in an organised fashion in your essay. Your conceptualised response is going to shine through if you keep referring to it, keep answering the question and treat the poetic devices, the form, the structure, as ways to demonstrate the concept and answer the question. You need to stick to your timings. That way you can show a broad range of appreciation for different ideas within the poem. Keep your eye firmly on the concept and the question throughout, and ensure that whatever you are writing links to both of these, and that you're doing it within your paragraph in about 9 minutes. People often write about a conclusion, and I think it is definitely worth including a conclusion, but not writing a lengthy conclusion at the risk of not having a chance to check your work. So your conclusion simply needs to be a further reiteration of the concept answering the question, and if you had an idea that didn't fit neatly into any of your paragraphs, maybe allow it to shine here in the conclusion. But I would strongly recommend that the conclusion is kept short and sweet, just a few sentences, and you have plenty of time to check through that your plan has appeared on your page in an essay format, that your spag is correct, that your terminology is there. So as you work through your plan, something I also want to just bring up is some people find it really, it helps their organisation if they cross off their ideas on the plan as they go, so they're not sort of searching through. As I've said, checking your timings regularly, starting each paragraph with a clear topic sentence, which answers the question, incorporates the concept. One thing I did want to bring up is a lot of students worry for this essay, particularly, is if they don't know what the poem is about. What I would suggest if you find yourself in that situation is not to panic. There is plenty you can still write about. Firstly, read through the poem again, deep breath, and think, how does the poem make me feel? What sort of atmosphere or mood is the poem setting? Which language is making me think that? And that gives you a way into the poem. You may not then be able to come up with a concept, but at least you will have things to write about. So start thinking about what the poem is suggesting as a mood, what atmosphere is being created, and which pieces of language are helping you know this. So you can hone in on those and at least use those as a jumping off point to answer the question. Writing nothing is far worse than writing something that might be slightly off. So make sure you're recognizing the similes or the metaphors, or seeing what the rhyme scheme is, noticing the enjambment. Pulling out those ideas and at least writing about those and covering them will get you plenty of recognition, even if it's not quite the conceptual response that I have been mentioning in this video. The other thing is to read plenty of poems and to keep practicing. Time is so important in these, and it's about working fast, having the courage of your convictions, and being able to write accurately and in a sophisticated manner. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.